I'm not a kind of person who does this as like a job. It's not my job to go out and help people kind of get on their feet, live their best life. I want to do it because I feel like I'm capable to do it.
This feels like a calling. You have to have some sort of calling, right?
Gosh, I have that same exact picture in my room.
Mr. Krabs' $1,000,000, yeah.
The $1,000,000.
Yeah, you have. If you're a real SpongeBob fan, you have to have the $1,000,000.
I've seen on TikTok going around Squidward looking at you through the Krusty Krab metal window.
That would be a good one.
Just like looking at you all disappointed.
And then from the other side, you'd have SpongeBob laughing, like looking at you with that smug face he always has.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, with like a tray.
Anyway, I mean, we've been talking about having you back over here for a little bit. When was the last time you were here?
About 2 or 3 months ago.
About 2 or 3 months ago. And we, at that time, we were talking about Josh, who's actually in the sidelines. Say hello, Josh, as loud as you can.
Howdy.
There you go. You're good enough. We were talking about Josh, catching up with him. And in that discussion, we had you, because you were in his life so prevalently. So, but I did say that I wanted to talk to you specifically about our friendship and how we met and what it's been like for you growing up.
Oh, yeah.
So let's reel it back. We have known each other since middle school.
Oh, yeah.
Since middle school. I'm pretty sure it was...
Only me and Josh over here.
Right.
That far back.
I gotcha. Do you remember specifically how we started talking? Because it's a little blurry to me.
I want to say that I sat behind you. You would kind of just make just casual jokes with me. Like you were trying to I guess you were trying to break the ice. So you would always kind of mess around, do all these funny things around me. And
you know what it was? I know what it was. We used to do like Beavis and Butthead impressions, and I think that's how it started. Was like we would go back and forth, and you thought it was funny, and so you would do it, and then I would do it, and that's kind of how we started talking. I don't know what class though. Well, the funny thing, what I thought was funny about you was you were very good at making impressions of different voices. You would just make different. You would say, one that stands out to me?
You were always way better at that.
No, but there was that one thing that you did that was like hilarious to me that you would just make up. I don't know if you made this one up. I think it does come from somewhere. You would say magnetosphere a lot. You would say it in this specific voice. You would be like magnetosphere. And you would just do it very randomly with no.
I do remember the phrase.
And it would be random. We would just be in class, like it would be silent, and I would just hear you magnetosphere in the background. I'd be like, what's wrong with you? But we would do a lot of stuff like that where I would do impressions of Beavis randomly, and then you would do random impressions of different characters. And I thought it was funny. And so we had similar senses of humor. And then that's kind of how like the basis of our group formed was just that we all had a very odd sense of humor, and we all just happened to find it funny. And so then we just kind of meshed because of that, because we just had a very strange sense of humor. And then we went into high school, and I think did you transfer or did you move? Because we kind of stopped interacting after middle school for a while. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I kind of was doing my own thing with my own little friend group, and I do remember you were kind of talking to other people as well.
Yeah.
So we kind of just naturally kind of made our new friends and whatnot, but it's not like we stopped being friends.
Right. And so then in that time frame where we kind of branched off and had our different friend groups, what was it that because you stayed in contact with Josh. Now you guys live together. Mm-hmm. And what do you think? You guys stayed in contact all throughout high school?
Oh, yeah. Me and him talked it wasn't like an everyday thing. But yeah, we would just talk to each other like every couple months, and, it'd be literally the same.
Now, I'm interested to get your perspective on this. What was your high school experience like? What did you think of it?
The term of regret. I would not say I regret anything, because anything that did happen, way back in high school or even a little bit before that, any time between then and now, there's no ounce of regret. everything happens, and it shapes who you are. Plenty of things I did, I would say I do regret, but it gave me that learning experience that I wouldn't normally not have today.
What do you think you learned in high school? The most important lessons that you learned?
Well, a lot of that learning experience kind of just comes from learning about yourself, the kind of things that you recognize that you do, and that maybe you can like change a little bit to kind of more so fine tune what you want other people to see in you, sort of.
Well, for you though, what specifically do you think that you learned about yourself?
I needed to stop being so passive in things, I guess, because a lot of stuff would kind of just happen, and I would always be a bystander and that sort of thing. And definitely during high school, I had that sort of change in heart where I was like, well, instead of just being there, watching kind of life pass me by with all these people doing their own thing and all that, why don't I be a more active part of my own life?
Mm-hmm. So you became a little bit more outspoken, you would say?
Yeah.
I think that's finding your own voice was a big chapter for me in high school, because I was very quiet. I didn't really talk to many people, and I've said this before, where I specifically was very focused on just my friend group, and I didn't really care too much about anything outside of it, where I was like, well, I don't really feel like I really can connect with other people. I genuinely disliked a lot of people in high school, like the energy that they had. Like I felt like in a lot of ways, I wasn't mischievous. I feel like in high school, there's a lot of that mischievous energy that people go around and get in trouble, and they go and pull pranks on people, and they go and that's part of like high school fun. I think like I saw that a lot. Pranks would happen, and people were very loud, and they try to get noticed. And I remember used to finding that I would find that very irritating, and I would just be like, I don't want to, like, it makes me want to not talk to these people, and so I would just keep quiet and just keep to myself. And out of high school, I had to kind of develop that voice. Was staying quiet doesn't help anybody either. Right. And so if I don't say anything and I think that things could be better, I also don't have the opportunity to learn. Does that make sense? Like if I say something to you today and it's not a good idea, like if I have this thought in my head of what I think would be good, and I say it out loud, and other people hear it and they're like, this is what I think about that. And then I'm like, I thought, this would be a really great idea. And all of a sudden I hear other people's perspectives, and I'm like, yeah, maybe it was just in my head it sounded better, and then I say it out loud and I realize that actually my opinion was not very accurate, or what I used to think isn't what was accurate. Like let's say I think about for a person that I dislike, that I found irritating, like why are they so loud? Why do they always have to do this? Why do they always have to do that? And I sit down and I say it, and then they go, well, in my family, we do A, B, and C, and it's like they start to make more sense. And it's like, oh, you don't do it with the intention of like bothering people. Maybe that's just how your family interacts. And little things like that, if I don't say it, if I didn't say that before, I would be stuck with my opinion of my inaccurate opinion of them. Yeah. Does that make sense? Like, so I think that's what leaving high school taught me, was like, ooh, it's really important that I say what I think, even if I think I'm going to be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. People's perspectives on literally any aspect of their life, no matter it's how they think, how they talk, how they sort of present themselves to others, like someone being almost absurdly loud, is kind of just stuff that they just picked up in their life. And even though it might annoy some people, well, those maybe those people that are annoyed by it might be a little bit more understanding if they knew the reasons. And
a lot of times too, and then we could talk about even like the mental health aspects of it, right? Because like when we're in high school, we're still finding our identity. Nobody really knows who they are really, and so you kind of try things, and it's not a bad thing, right? It's not a bad thing to go through phases. I'm sure at some point you went through phase 2. I went through phases, and then you figure out what works for you and what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep, but you don't know until you try, until you're that annoying person to somebody of like, oh, this person really, really talks about this all the time. And that's like your life for a while, whether it's you really enjoy, like, for example, if you really enjoy certain shows and a certain group of shows that you like to watch, and then that's all you talk about. Some people might find that annoying, right? But that's part of finding who you are, is you really enjoy something, you talk about it a lot, and then you're like, you know what? I'm past it, right? Like, I enjoy this now. I enjoy this. And you don't need as much validation anymore as you grow older. That's one of the things that I found that I understand more, where when you're younger, you kind of need that validation of like people like me, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, along with that too, is like, I also feel like that part doesn't really stop for a lot of people. Kind of going through phases, seeing how, seeing the kind of things that you would like, still discovering a lot of stuff about yourself, even like way past high school.
Yeah.
A lot of people, don't really reach that sort of part of their life where they've kind of just got everything figured out about themselves until until they're like middle-aged.
And well, that's true. And it's a good point, actually, that everybody gets to that stage at a different time. And I think it's for a reason. I do think that everybody here has different lessons in life that they're here to learn. And some people learn them later in life, maybe because it's been more challenging for them or they've had more obstacles. And I've seen that a lot, where there's certain families that I've run into that, like, some people are stuck not being able to express not being able to explore who they want to be because their families are so, what do you call it? They're so, I don't know if uptight's the right word, but like very controlling of like, you can't do this thing. Like you can't, you have to kind of abide by how the family behaves. Like there are family rules of like, you can't be too loud or you can't be too quiet or whatever it might be. Some families are so integrated like that, where it's like, it's hard for me to be an individual in this group of people.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen that a handful of times. And so some people, literally family members have to die before they're like, okay, who am I?
Yeah.
And sometimes it happens later in life. And I'm certain of it. I've seen different levels of maturity at different ages for different people. So like the whole thing of like, by a certain age, by the time you're 30, your whole life should be together and you should have a house and a family. And it's like, no, it's different for everybody when life clicks, right? When you start to figure out who you are, what you're ready for. And some people go their whole life and go, I'm content with just me and maybe a partner, or maybe just me.
Well, another part of like, losing somebody to kind of more focus in on who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Other times too is sometimes you just gotta meet the right person to kind of figure out who you are.
That's true. I also think that, well, that's where the whole conversation about, until you have other people to bounce off of, like your personality off of, it's hard to really see what other people see. Because like you might see yourself a certain way and you go like, yeah, I think I'm a pretty tolerable person. I feel like I'm very understanding. I feel like I'm A, B, and C. And then you'll meet someone, whether it's your friends or your a potential partner, and you bounce off your personality, and then they reflect back what they see.
Yeah.
And it might be totally different than when you thought you were showing, like what you thought your personality was. And then you learn from that and you go, oh, I don't like how I make people feel when I do this. And so how can I do better? Because I want to keep these people in my life, right?
Yeah.
So I think that matters too, that you meet somebody that reflects your personality back to you and go, this is what I see.
I feel like that can tie pretty easily back into, meeting you.
Right.
Different people might have these senses of humor, and when they kind of click with other people, they kind of can fine tune that part of themselves to more reflect, what they want.
Mm-hmm. And so then moving forward, right? What is life like? What has life been like for you? Because we've had multiple chats throughout the years. Some have. One of the things that evolved from high school has been our conversations. So like what we used to talk about, right? And this is why I highlight high school, what it was like when we were talking back then. When we were in high school, we were, everything was about humor and everything was about not taking life too seriously. Like it was just very like, what's the next funny thing? That's what a lot of our friendship felt like is what's the next funny thing? And then we would
kind of just one-upping each other.
Exactly. And so we would just do that. And so then we leave high school and we reconnected a couple of times. We talked like, just like, hey, what's up? Right? Like every once in a blue moon. And most of the time it would be, you would reach out and be like, hey, like, what's up? What's going on? Right? And so we would just talk and it would just be kind of casual. I remember when you first moved out to Wisconsin, we had a chat when you first were out there, where you were like, where are you at now? And you're like, oh, I moved over here and I do this now. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. You know, we talked a little bit then. I forgot what it was. I was doing something. I think it was like comedy sketches or something. And you saw them and you like had reached out and said, oh, hey, I thought this was funny. Right. And then we would talk about that for a little bit. And I'd be like, hey, where are you at now? And you're like, oh, I'm over here. And so I'm like, oh, that's awesome. You know, you kind of moved away for a little bit and tried something else out. So I was like, okay, cool. So then that was like the last chat. And then we had chatted again when I first started doing all this stuff on the channel. And we had a long discussion. And the discussion we had there was the most different we had ever had. And it was just the most, probably the deepest conversation we had ever had.
Down to earth.
Very like, what is really going on? Right.
Yeah.
And I was just so caught off guard because not many, see, here's the thing about my group of friends. My group of friends, we're very much about just laughing about things. And we never really had super serious conversations. Maybe it's because we just couldn't handle it. I feel like it was just like nobody really is comfortable having super deep conversations. And so the way we deal with hard things in life is we just laugh about it. And so it was kind of like one of the first times where I sat down with one of my childhood friends and we had like a very serious conversation, like a very like open, like what is going on. And so I was like, okay, so up until then, I really only saw your like funny side. Like I didn't really see that. The more human interaction of how are things and perhaps I can't help you. You know, perhaps like whatever it is that you have, like I don't have a solution for you. Oh, yeah. But like what is going on? And we had a huge, like maybe like over an hour we talked.
Oh yeah. We talked for a little bit.
We talked for a while and I was just like, I don't know. You just came at the time where I was like so vulnerable. I was like, dude, I haven't had someone ask me that this whole time. And I was just so, I don't know how to describe it. I was like a pressurized balloon that was just like ready to pop of just all the things I was dealing with. And you were just like, how's it going? And I was just like, I just deflated, dude. I was like, this is happening. Like, I feel like a lot of things are kind of falling apart. I don't really have an answer. I don't know how to deal with it. Because at the time I'd left my job. I had dealing with a breakup, then starting up the podcast and then also trying to figure out where I was going to stay. Because, you know, when you live with a partner and you no longer do, you have to figure out where it is you're going to stay. Because I didn't have a good enough relationship to go back home with my stepdad. So it's not like that wasn't an option for me anymore. And so I was like, what am I going to do? Like, so just to give an insight as to where I was at, right? When you kind of came in and was like, what's going on, right? Because you obviously saw what I was putting up on there and you were just curious, like, is something else going on? Because when you see stuff like that, naturally you're curious. And so you came in and you were like, so yeah, like I saw all this stuff that you were posting and I'm just, you know, seeing how you're doing. And I was like, yeah, so basically like everything fell apart and I started going, right?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of it was kind of just asking the right questions. You know, as you've alluded to in the past, you know, sometimes a conversation can start with like, oh, how are you doing? To like, oh, haha, well, that's good.
Right.
You know, but, you know, it's kind of like how are you doing, and then kind of elaborating on what they're going off of, because a lot of times people just need someone else to talk to.
But you see, it was important that you understood what the questions would be to ask, because it could have very well been just like, hey, how are you doing? And I could be like, oh, all this stuff is going on. And you could have just very well been like, well, I hope it goes well for you. I hope things get better. And that would have been the end of it. And I would have been fine with that. Like, it would have been like, all right, well, I appreciate him checking up on me. But then, you did ask more questions like, well, what do you have specifically that's going on? And I told you, I rattled off everything that was happening. Like, so this was happening. I'm like, so right now I'm kind of lost. Was I think what I told you, I feel like I'm lost.
Yeah.
I don't really know where I'm going in life right now. And because I had just left the military too. And so that was my life for like 6 years. And so to suddenly not have that, to suddenly not have, like everything that I had built, like a whole foundation of my life up to that point was like crumbled. And so I was really trying to figure out, well, what am I now? And who do I want to be now? And that's where our conversation comes in. And you asked me about, you told me about your experiences, right? You offered your experiences as to what you have been through that might be similar. And, you had mentioned some relationships too.
It was a back and forth thing. So I treated it as a back and forth, relating my side, but obviously not being like, oh, you think you got it bad, but here's
no, it didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
It did not feel that way, and I just want to make that clear. Like, it didn't for me. It wasn't like a thing about, oh, he's just trying to one up me, because there are people like that just go like, I went through this and this was rough, right?
Yeah,
but that wasn't
back in my day.
Back in my day, right? And it wasn't like that at all. It didn't feel that way at all. It did feel like, well, something that happened to me that feels a lot like that, and this is what I did. Like, did help hearing, just because it does feel lonely in those moments, right? When it's like you with your own thoughts, it's very easy to be like, I'm on an island here, right? Like, it doesn't feel like anybody really grasps what I'm going through. And then just to have that, so it was very important. And I just want to know, right? Because we've talked a lot about me. I want to know, where did that come from you? Because at some point that had to have developed, where there was this need to like be more human in that aspect.
I definitely see where you're going. So a lot of it is kind of just reflection, seeing what I've done and how I can continually improve myself. Because you said that you kind of had a foundation of and then it kind of slowly but surely broke apart, and you had to find like some new foundation that you could make and you could stand on. Whereas I've always felt that foundation is kind of something I'm always constantly building. Like, moving out of my mom's apartment into one of my buddy's places, and kind of just dealing with the chaos of his family, and then going from that, I'm like, well, it's been like a year since I lived there, so I'm moving back in with my mom because she needs help with her rent. But a lot of that stuff was kind of just still falling on me. A lot of the responsibility was still falling on me at the end of the day. Living with my mom kind of fell through. I didn't have a falling through with my mom. It was more the living situation itself.
Yeah.
Had to move back in with my buddy that I previously lived in, but now he's out in Wisconsin.
Right.
So now suddenly I have to move from Illinois to Indiana with my mom for her thing. Now all the way out to Wisconsin. Out in the middle of nowhere, by the way.
Right.
It was quite a culture shock.
Yeah.
Living in suburbs like this out here in Illinois, to a 10-minute drive to like a dollar store or a gas station, and then from there another 20 minutes just to get to a Walmart. Out here it's like 20 minutes, you could be anywhere.
Right.
You can go to any store, get any sort of like, you can go past like 5 different types of food and pick out the best one that you want.
Right.
That kind of culture shock Definitely made me realize some of the more important basic, like the really core basics of my life of like how much money can I spend to like, eat for the week,
Right.
How long can I make a few cans of tuna, stretch,
Right.
that kind of stuff. So that part kind of humbled me with the whole financial stuff. I was already struggling, of course. Being out in the city with the city prices doesn't really help things.
Right.
Generally, I think a lot of the experiences past that are just people I've met.
Mm-hmm.
It's not at that point after I've moved out to Wisconsin. I think from there it was kind of just the people more so than the life experiences I was getting. But just meeting a lot of the right people, I feel, helped me out a lot. A lot of what you perceive as right, like you were alluding to before, might not be exactly like what you think. You might have like a general idea of what you want, but a lot of that just needs to be focused. And there's a lot of aspects of myself, and I'm sure you can say this of yourself too, like you have a good general aspect, and some might be smaller, more focused than others, but still you need different perspectives or different stuff to happen to you to kind of focus in and help you really understand yourself.
Like a refining of right and wrong for you. And I also, I want to add too is I noticed, and maybe you can shed some light on this, right and wrong for me used to be very black and white, where it's like there's a line here and here's right and here is wrong. And as I grew up, I realized that as I met more people and I interacted with more people, I found more and more gray areas, right? Where it's like two things can be true at the same time. And that's what makes it a gray area, right? Yeah. Because on one hand, a certain action that somebody does could be wrong, right? But then if their intentions were good, are they bad people? Right? Because I used to see it very black and white. If you do bad things, you're a bad person. And that's not accurate, right? And what teaches you that is what you just mentioned. You meet more people, and you meet people that challenge that mindset. That go, okay, but for the most part, this person is overall has good intentions and does a lot of good things, right? Mm-hmm. But then they do some things that is on that line. And so what are they? And that's where the gray areas are. And what I realized is that like everybody is both good and bad. That's what I realized is everybody has good and bad to them, right? Yeah. Doesn't mean that they do it. The bad comes from just negative intentions, right? But everybody has good and bad to them. And when you see it that way, people become more human to you. I think seeing things black and white for me made me look at people like either they're angels or they're devils. And that's a very, very slippery slope to go down.
Yeah. Now, my perspective on that is with the whole like, black and white, good and bad sort of aspect of people is no matter what, like you said, everyone has that good and bad in them. Now, this might just be my like optimistic side speaking, but I don't really focus too much at all on the bad parts of people because everyone's going to have them, and it's just better to kind of focus in on, what's positive about them. Like even some of the most sour people you can meet, I've probably been friends with. Like I know at my previous job and at this job I'm currently working, there's plenty of sourpusses that plenty of people don't get along with for one reason or another. But they always have something about them that's good. And so when you kind of focus in on that, you see the humanity in them, where other people just see those bad aspects. It's also very, very important to just treat other people like they're people. Yeah,
I also want to add that do you think that it's seeing it that way, right? Where it's like, what good do they have in them? Do you think that it also helps your outlook of the world that way?
Oh, absolutely. No matter what part of the world someone is in, no matter the circumstances of how they grew up, everyone has the opportunity to, be their best self and, have that compassionate side to them, have empathy for one another. Everyone has that capability, no matter how they grew up or where they grew up.
Now, growing up, do you think that, did you feel that kind of empathy in your life when you were younger, or was that something that you had to learn on your own?
Of course, it is something that you sort of have to learn, because I feel like, you've been around plenty of kids. Kids don't exactly have that empathy. Kids have the mindset, like the very, very naturalistic mindset of, well, here's food on like an aisle, like there's a bunch of apples. Like, what's the problem if I just take one of those apples in the grocery store? Like, where's the harm in that? Everyone else can have plenty of apples that they want.
Yeah,
they have that sort of mindset. But when you grow older and you learn that empathy from other people, like me, I learned my empathy from my grandfather. No matter how much of a spoiled little brat I was, because he did a lot for me, and so it sort of had that effect on my head. But also seeing the pure compassion that he had for me, other people, my other family members, of course, definitely shaped and gave that foundation for the empathy to build itself on.
So it comes mostly, you would say, from your grandfather?
Absolutely.
Now, did you ever get to know much about what your grandfather valued and what it is that made him that way?
No, not really. My grandpa's always been a very quiet person. He let a lot of his actions more so speak for himself.
Give me a memory, like a core memory you have of him that sticks with you to this day.
Well, I feel like just me helping him out at my church that I used to go to. Every month we would have like a pancake sort of meal, because it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning. And so after Mass, everyone would kind of go into the little court that we had, and my grandpa would be making pancakes and stuff, and I would pretty much be helping him, hand out pancakes to all the people.
So he did a lot of volunteer work.
Oh, a lot of volunteer work. Even outside of the church, we would do volunteer work for a bunch of cancer societies and stuff like that, because my aunt had a kid that had cancer. He passed on a long while ago, but still from that he did a lot of charity work. Yeah.
That says a lot about a person too, doesn't it? In what they do with their free time, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was been retired, and to kind of focus his days on other people definitely had that sort of impact on me as well. Especially even as a kid, I didn't understand what I was doing, like why I was collecting money for these things, why I would be helping hand out drinks or pancakes to people. I didn't really understand why I did that. It was just something good to do, just because it was good to do.
Yeah, well, at the time when you're a kid, you don't have a grasp on specifically the why of everything is happening. You just know that you're doing it, and that maybe you enjoy it or maybe you don't, whatever it is that you feel as a kid. But you have a perspective of like, well, everybody's doing this, so I'm doing it too. That's kind of how simple it is as a kid. Is you just like, oh, everybody's doing this, so I'm doing it, and that's as far as it goes. But when the interesting part is when you grow up and you look back at it and you go, okay, so this is what he was doing, and there's a big, like a how large the undertaking is to do stuff like that, right? Like how much planning is involved, how involving other people is, how that takes time and planning, and then seeing the level of effort he was willing to put to get those things together. I think that also makes you appreciate his effort more.
I definitely didn't appreciate him in my early years of my life, but the more and more I grew and sort of understood myself, and I was able to recognize a lot of the stuff that he was doing, it helped me sort of understand the good in what he was doing and sort of, use that as my foundation of, what I could be.
And well, that actually leads to the very next thing that we're going to talk about, right? Because so that is your motivation as to why you give what you can when you can, right? And so then we fast forward to where you're at now, right? Where you experienced living on your own for a while, and then also living very frugally, right? Like trying to stretch out money and food, and you understand the struggle of that, of the thing that faces a lot of adults is stretching money and food, and making sure that you're going to have to make enough to make ends meet, and then also to eat something, right? Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, then we talk about how did this whole thing because Josh now lives with you, right? How did this whole thing come about of that whole aspect of not just having him, but the idea of like, I want to help people, because this is something we had a conversation about last time that you mentioned to me, was I want to be able to assist people, but to not solve problems for them, but to be a stepping stone. Right. How did that come to be? I
can use my experiences with my grandpa as a jumping board into this part, because he did a lot for me, without ever, I'm a kid. You can't really ask anything in return for a kid.
Right.
I feel like all my previous experiences with my roommates, all the people that have kind of helped me learning the life lessons that I have right now, have kind of shaped me to be more prepared, I would say. Because I think that's a lot of it is like, I'm not a kind of person who does this as like a job. It's not my job to go out and help people kind of get on their feet, live their best life. I want to do it because I feel like I'm capable to do it.
This feels like a calling. You have to have some sort of calling, right?
I feel like I do have some want to do it. And I feel like that is a lot of like what a person wants out of their career is doing something that they want to do.
Yeah.
And helping people is absolutely something I want to do. So as far as like exactly what that means to help people, like, I don't know. It could just be a whole litany of things, like doing community work, maybe getting a job in some sort of scientific field that ultimately helps like either the environment or how people interact with the environment, or even going into psychology to help people with like, some of the problems that they need to focus in on.
But I do think like, for example, when we talk about helping, this is like a big branch. Like there are a lot of things you could do that's helping that isn't as involved as this specifically. Like you could go and like you said, community service. You can go and go to soup kitchens and help feed the homeless. Right? There's a lot of things you can do that isn't as involved as what you're doing. Right? Because when you have people in your house, right, and you want to help them, they're friends, of course, right? It's a lot more involved because you're with them all the time. Like when you go to soup kitchens, and this isn't to say that that doing those things are somehow not as helpful. All of these things have their role, right? So with that in mind, that you could help that way, you could help this way. There's specifically this is very involved.
Okay.
Where does this specifically come to mind, or you're just like, I can just help someone this way, so I'll do it this way?
Oh, I don't think I'm not exactly sure if this is what's being alluded to, but I definitely don't want to do this after I help Josh with everything. I don't want to continue doing this like with other friends.
No. That's why I was curious, right? Like, is this specifically because he's your friend? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, is this like, hey, this is my friend, so I'm willing to do this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is that what it is?
Absolutely. I mean, he's the. I've known this guy since early middle school. I think fourth grade, because I think third grade I was. I think third grade I was still living in like Harvey, Blue Island. I knew this guy ever since then, and seeing that he was struggling the way he was, and me looking at myself and be like, well, I was able to deal with these guys living in my house pretty much rent free, and fucking kicking their feet up on the couch.
Yeah, I know you say that. I don't want to do another one, right? But I suspect that you just have this inner calling to it, and if it even obviously, I don't think you go and talk to a stranger and be like, "Hey, I need somewhere to live," and you just come on, dude. Like, I don't think that you would do that per se, but I do feel like I do see this trend just based off of the other people you've talked about. Josh isn't the first person that you've helped out that way. No. Right. And so I know you're saying that this isn't going to be something that you do long term and that you don't see yourself like having another person. But I do feel like there's this inner like calling of whether it's just for friends or it's just for family members, but this inner drive to like people that I have some form of rapport with and I want to help. I'm going to put my time and energy to do that any way I can. That's how I see it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't necessarily think that this is a thing where you just, it was just him. I feel like you would do that for many people. And it does feel like it's some form of a calling. And again, you could, if I'm wrong, you can always disagree with me, but I do feel that. I do feel like you just can't see them struggle.
Oh yeah. I don't like to see anyone struggle. I'm always like even going back to the kind of one-off conversation, me coming out of the blue into your life and asking you the deep questions. That's kind of one of those things where it's like I don't like to see someone in that sort of position, and so I want to kind of get to know the situation, and maybe while I'm doing it, help them get to know the situation, their situation a little bit better. And
I'm not laughing because like it's like I find it like funny in any way of laughing at it, but it's just interesting to me that like you almost can't resist it. Like you see it and you're like I have to say something or I have to do something.
This guy who I barely talked to.
Who I haven't talked to in years. Like you and I didn't have the rapport that let's say you and Josh had.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're both Joshes, the other Josh. So for you to have come out of the blue, that's why it caught me off guard. It's not something I see all the time, right? For somebody that I haven't spoken to in years, like we hadn't really had like a deep conversation other than that one interaction we had when you moved, which was like you could have with anybody. Like you could have like somebody you see at a bar somewhere, somebody you see out in a restaurant, and you're like, hey man, I haven't seen you in a long time. What are you doing? And you just sit down, you catch up, and then you move on and you don't talk to them ever again. Yeah. Right. And so like there's just isn't that deep interaction other than you just sit down and you catch up and say what's up and just a general care that like people have. But you hadn't talked to me in such a long time, and especially not seriously, that you would just come out of the blue and be like, hey, I see that you're having a hard time. What's going on? And so that's why I find it difficult when you tell me that it's like, nah, it's like a one-off thing. Like I wouldn't do this regularly. I disagree with you. I think that you just have this calling and you just can't ignore it. And maybe you haven't explored it deep enough, but yeah, I see it. I do see it.
Well, I mean, if I were to do something like what I'm doing with Josh, it would definitely be with like a spouse. I don't think I could take in another friend and be like,
sure,
all right, well, time to kind of start from square one and kind of build them up
sure.
from there again. I feel like
sure.
I can only do that so many times.
Exactly. Fair enough. And I think that it's also would be healthy for you to not do that heavily, because you have to take care of yourself first, because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't help other people. And so I think that's a valid point. You have a limit, of course.
On top of kind of going off of that is like, I do talk to a lot of people about, my living situation. It's not like I'm just going in this and dealing with all this myself. I talk to people. I get people's perspective on things to know if I'm doing certain things right, or if some things I could be doing differently. I talk to, and I always consider their opinions and their interjections. No matter what they are, even if they're like, oh, you got a roommate that doesn't have a job. Well, why isn't he kicked out yet? It's like, well, thanks for your opinion, but like, I'll
handle this.
I'll put that on the back burner.
Yeah. It's not something you think about, right? Like, you don't see it that way. You see it more as like, this is my friend and they need help, and so I have the resources. So why wouldn't I help them? Yeah.
Well, a lot of that is like, it's not even a consideration for me. The idea of like, oh, I'm taking in this guy because I know his situation. I know, how much of a struggle it's going to be taking this guy in and, putting him to a spot where he can just like, walk through the front door and be like, all right, well, I got my own place. So I'll catch up with you later.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. To go into that starting mentality, to be like, oh wow, that was a couple months of really, really tough stuff. But hey, doesn't have a job yet, so I guess he's gone.
Right. So that's not something.
That's not that kind of connection.
Right. And it does have to. I do think it does have to be, for you anyway. Just based off what I'm saying, it does have to be like I have to have some form of a connection to that person, whether it was we were friends for a while before, or we were roommates, or we were or family members, which makes sense, right? Like it's very difficult, and not everybody really has resources to be able to help everybody that they meet.
Oh wow!
Right?
I mean, as far as the resources, like Josh even knows I'm working overtime hours just to kind of make sure that we can make ends meet and all that. But I don't expect to like do this, long term.
I know
he's gonna get his own job down the line. He's gonna get his own car. He's gonna, he's gonna do all that stuff.
And that's the hope, right? Like when you we've had a long conversation about this specifically. When you want what you would like for them, for that whoever it is that comes into your life, whether it's just a one-off or you decide like I want to do that, right? But the whole goal is that they can take care of themselves. That's the final end product that you hope for, right? Yeah. Just I'll be here for you until you can figure out what you want to do. But the goal is that you figure out what you want to do, right? And I think that part is also takes a certain level of selflessness, of like, there's no time frame. You are here. The idea is that you do plan something, right? The plan is to take care of yourself at some point, but there is no set timeline, because everyone has a timeline that's different from everybody else of when they're ready or where they're at.
Like we alluded to before, people mature at different rates. Depending on who they meet, what kind of things that they've lost in their life or will lose, that kind of thing will shape a person and help them reach who they want to be.
And so, as we come close to the end of our time, what do you think? Has this experience been like what you thought it might be? Did you think about it previously, of like what it would be like, somebody that's having a hard time, that's a friend of yours, having them be in your life this intimately, where they're living with you? Was there any consideration as to like what challenges might come with it, or was it just a no-brainer for you, where it's like whatever comes is going to come?
I mean, I've dealt with plenty of challenges with previous roommates. I alluded to before, living with my one friend right after I moved out of my mom's apartment for the first time. Oh man, there was challenges galore there. I don't think anything can really beat living in the same room as a guy who kind of lives in their mom's basement. I can go on and on about that guy. Me and him have had our ups and downs, but me and him are still going plenty strong. Very, very importantly, because of people that I met in my life.
Right.
Without those people, I don't think I would have still been friends with this person.
And so do you think that interaction, like difficult interactions like that, do you think patience was a big factor in that? Did you learn to be more patient?
I've been told I have the patience of a saint, and
I would agree with that.
And I do think my patience goes pretty far, a lot farther than even I would give it credit for. It's like, oh well, my patience stops here. I guess a little bit further is probably more realistic. Actually, a little bit further than that too.
Right.
Oh.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions that I ask every guest. Have you discovered purpose in life? And if you haven't, what do you think it might be?
No, I don't think I've discovered my purpose in life. No. And I don't think I'll probably ever come to that recognition of what my purpose is, because I feel like more so my purpose lies within other people. A lot of my philosophy kind of comes around like, let's go into the spiritual aspect of this, where I grew up as a atheist, and I still consider myself an atheist, even though that's not really a term that's really thrown around a whole lot in my life. I always consider that the end of my time will be just darkness, and that's it. That's all there will be. And a lot of people recognize that and be like, well, that's kind of sad for you to just stop, and then that's the end of you. And my philosophy with that is I want to make the best impression I can with people, helping people out as I do, helping people, be their best self, creating good memories with people. That is what's going to keep me living on. I will live on through other people that I've had that impact on. And as long as I can keep doing that until I'm all done, then I lived a nice, successful life then.
I would say that sounds pretty fulfilling to me. If you could speak to your childhood self, what would you say?
As I've said before, you learn from everything, bad and good. Be your best self, Always be considerate of others, No matter what, you'll always be there for yourself, and that's all you really need.
Mike McDonell, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Josh.